Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we're diving into a fascinating story of human triumph that has, ironically, paved the way for an absolute existential crisis. You know, over the last 500 years, humanity conquered some of its deadliest microscopic enemies, completely changing how we live. But in doing so, we kind of inadvertently engineered our own worst nightmare, the unstoppable superbug. We completely transformed our approach to health, built a massive empire of chemical medicine, and yeah, we enjoyed a golden age of healing. But now, that very system is faltering under the weight of microscopic evolution.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to cover 1. The chemical medicine empire. 2. The antibiotic miracle. 3. How resistance actually works. 4. The agricultural tipping point. 5. Misuse and our current crisis. And finally, 6. Empowering health with Maya. Section 1. The chemical medicine empire, from spiritual healing to chemical reliance.
So, back in the 1300s, diseases like the plague were widely viewed as a test of faith, or even a punishment from God. People relied on spiritual healing, prayer, or things like the king's touch for a cure. But as we move into the 1500s, the Renaissance changes absolutely everything. A figure named Paracelsus introduces alchemy into medicine. This was a massive departure from traditional herbal remedies. Suddenly, we're combining metals and chemical powders to cure ailments. It actually works so well that by 1657, King Louis XIV was famously cured of typhoid using a chemical compound. Fast forward to 1948 with the establishment of the NHS in the UK, and we see the absolute solidification of institutional medicine. We established a literal empire that emphasized diagnosis, investigation, and treatment using chemicals called drugs, and created vaccinations claiming they prevent infections. But as we'll see, these identified wrongdoings and this absolute reliance on chemicals really undermined confidence and stifled our focus on natural prevention, protection, and healing.
Moving on to Section 2, the antibiotic miracle, defeating the scourge of humanity.
Just look at this incredible number, 20. Before the 1940s, bacterial infections were the absolute scourge of humanity. Badly cleaned wounds on the battlefield, cholera, tuberculosis, these were massive killers. But with the widespread introduction of penicillin, discovered by Alexander Fleming, humanity gained an average of 20 years of life expectancy. The mortality rate for penicillin-sensitive infections plummeted by an astonishing 58%, almost overnight. We were told, and we all widely believed, that antibiotics were an absolute silver bullet.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that in his 1945 Nobel Prize acceptance speech, the inventor of penicillin himself, Alexander Fleming, practically predicted the future. He warned that if we treated these miraculous drugs carelessly, if we underdosed or misused them, we would expose our microbes to non-lethal quantities and actually teach them how to resist the drug. And unfortunately, humanity pretty much completely ignored his warning, leading us straight into our current predicament.
Which brings us to Section 3. How resistance actually works. The biology of superbugs.
Here's the thing. Bacteria aren't just sitting around waiting to die. They are incredibly adaptable. One of their most devious tricks is horizontal gene transfer. Essentially, microbes can just swap genetic material with each other. It's like a giant puzzle. This means a harmless bacteria living in your gut might figure out how to resist an antibiotic, and it can actually pass that genetic cheat code right over to a dangerous disease-causing bacteria. They are actively sharing survival strategies across microbial communities. No way, right?
Let's move to and see how this builds into a population bottleneck, which is a process driven entirely by our own human behavior. Step 1. You take an antibiotic and it quickly wipes out the weak bacteria. Step 2. Because the majority of the bacteria are dead, your symptoms vanish and you feel better, right? So you decide to stop taking your pills early. Step 3. This is the fatal mistake. The few bacteria that survived those initial days are the strongest ones. By stopping the medication, you've completely cleared the playing field of competition. Those strong surviving bacteria now multiply unchecked, creating an entirely new, highly resistant strain. We are literally breeding our own superbugs by not finishing our medicine.
Section 4. The agricultural tipping point. More than just a human problem.
Prepare yourself for this data point, 73%. A staggering 73% of all antimicrobials used globally are given to animals. We aren't just using these miracles of medicine to save human lives. We are pumping them into livestock in massive amounts just to fatten up birds and prevent infections in packed fisheries and veterinary medicine. This unrestrained environmental saturation has completely tilted the evolutionary balance, creating vast reservoirs of antimicrobial resistance in the food chain that eventually make their way right back to us.
Fortunately,
Governments are actually waking up to this deeply intertwined crisis. Take Belgium's public health initiative, for example. Their One Health National Action Plan recognizes that you absolutely cannot separate human health, animal health, and environmental health. Belgium is aggressively targeting a 70% reduction in total antibiotic sales for animals by 2030 compared to 2011. They're moving towards preventative veterinary medicine and strict benchmarking to stop this agricultural misuse. Section 5. Misuse and our current crisis. How daily habits breed disaster.
And this brilliantly illustrates one of the biggest wrongdoings of our modern medical era, the massive public misunderstanding of what antibiotics actually do. People were made to believe antibiotics just kill bacteria across the board, knowing full well they can actually only act on certain bacteria. They have absolutely zero effect on viral infections or fungi, like the common cold, the flu, or COVID-19. Yet during the COVID pandemic, nearly 7% of diagnoses were associated with concomitant bacterial infections, which led to a massive surge in antibiotic use in hospitals. Giving antibiotics to someone with a strictly viral infection does nothing but destroy their microbiome and breed resistance.
And you know, this over-reliance extends right into our daily routines. Doctors often recklessly prescribe antibiotics for common, self-resolving ailments. But beyond the clinic, companies mindlessly market commercial hand soaps, antiseptics, and household detergents packed with low-dose antibiotics. What happens? Well, these low doses don't kill the tough pathogens. Instead, they wipe out your friendly bacteria. Without the friendly bacteria to crowd them out, the dangerous resistant superbugs are left with a clear path to multiply and thrive right in our homes.
Finally, Section 6. Empowering health with Maya. Breaking the chain of transmission.
So what does this all mean? Now that we humans are in crisis, how do we actually regain control? How do we reduce our dangerous over-reliance on the doctor's office for every common viral infection and break the chain of transmission so we aren't spreading illnesses in crowded waiting rooms where the most dangerous superbugs live? Well, the answer lies in shifting our focus back to education, early detection, and personal responsibility. This is exactly why the Maya app was created. Maya serves as a modern antidote to our broken system. Instead of rushing to the hospital at the first sign of a cough, risking exposure to resistant hospital-acquired infections, or unknowingly spreading a virus, Maya empowers you to educate yourself and identify symptoms early, directly from home. I created Maya to educate and ensure people reduce the risk of contracting infections, knowing full well that infected patients are incredibly difficult to cure nowadays. It provides expert isolation guidance to protect your family and community, cutting out wasted consultations and drastically reducing your risk of exposure to unbeatable pathogens. So, the crucial point is this. The era of blind reliance on a magical chemical cure for every single sniffle is officially over. We just can't afford to misuse these incredible medicines anymore or rely solely on an overburdened healthcare system that inadvertently breeds superbugs. Are you ready to step up, utilizing empowering tools like Maya to educate yourself and fundamentally change how you protect your health and your community? It's time to break the chain. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.